right. Welcome to this AI Wayfinder Seminar Series installment. Today we are very happy to welcome Dr. Adegbite. He is a postdoctoral research fellow hosted by Prof. Edouan Kotze in the Department of Computer Science and Informatics here at the University of the Free State. He has a passion for thorough research work and specializes in natural language processing, text mining, speech synthesis, and numerical computation. He obtained his PhD in intelligence systems engineering, and his research interests encompass providing a computational model for one of the African language communication systems. Dr. Adegbite has some published peer review articles and contributed to conferences with a chapter in a book. In addition to those research endeavors, he is committed to teaching and mentoring, and he's also a lecturer. He strives to inspire the upcoming generation of scholars and foster a culture of doggedness and industriousness within the academic community. Dr. Adegbite also welcomes collaborations and opportunities to engage with fellow researchers, students, and industry partners. And I will add his contact details in the chat if you are interested in a collaboration with him. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I want to believe I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. So I want to appreciate the opportunity for this presentation in the AI Wayfinder series. I'll be presenting on challenges and shortcomings of using Google Gemini for programming. I'm Dr. Adewuyi Adegbite, hosted by Professor Edouan Kotze, a postdoctoral research fellow. So when you talk of Gemini, Gemini really is an upgraded version of Google Bard, and Gemini is a family of multimodal models from Google, and it's a generative AI model. When we talk of multimodal, we are talking of different modalities of data. That is, it works with image, videos, sound, text. So, and Gemini apps could give real-time information from Google Maps, flights, hotels, YouTube, and the likes. Gemini exists in mobile version too, which allows selection of languages and locations. So, the Google Gemini gives direct access to Google AI. Gemini majorly uses large language models. From the various examples of, I know ChatGPT is common to many, and which uses GPT 3.5, GPT 4, and the likes. So it's a large language models which pick up pattern from languages that it has been trained with. Another thing with Gemini is that it can be accessed with family Google account or education account for under the age of 18. Gemini is available in more than 40 languages, and I have the list of some of the languages. Gemini is available in English, Japanese, Korean, Arabic, and the likes. So we have a lot of languages in which Gemini is available. Gemini has three major family models. We have the Nano, we have Pro, we have Ultra. Nano is the version majorly being loaded into mobile device. So that is the mobile version of Gemini. While Pro has two variants, that is the 1.0 and the 1.5. So Pro is believed to have capability or capacity as your chat GPT 3.5. For those that are familiar with generative AI models, we are aware that OpenAI has released ChatGPT 4. So Gemini Pro is believed to have comparable capabilities with ChatGPT 3.5. And why your why the Gemini Ultra is believed to have even more capability than that than GPT-4. I'm going to show a note on that to show that a comparison of that GPT-4 with Gemini Ultra coming, because after some experiments were conducted between Gemini and that of GPT-4, which is from OpenAI, it was discovered that Gemini performs better, that is, does more better than that GPT-4. I will show that in a minute. When you look at these, because Gemini deals with multimodal data, that is text, videos, images, and sounds. When Gemini was compared, I want to believe you are seeing the screen. When text is being dealt with, that is, when there is a generation of text using the benchmark MMMU, Gemini has an accuracy of 90% and GPT-4 86.4. That's even after 5 shots. For those that are familiar with large language models, you can have one shot model, you can even have 0 shot. That is, there is no pre-example given to that model, yet it's able to generate. So before GPT-4 could have 86.4%, there was like 5 shots, like 5 various examples being trained with before giving that. For reasoning, it was performed on 3 benchmark. And out of the 3 benchmark, these are 3 popular benchmark, Gemini has more accuracy than GPT-4 in 2 of the benchmarks. Why GPT-4 has more in one of the benchmark, that is in common sense reasoning. Can the generative AI models, can it think through, okay, this and this sometimes could be mathematical analysis. This was given this also number of balls. One was taken away. Two was added. How many is remaining? Things like that. Reasoning. Can the generative AI model reason? They have common sense reasoning. To what extent can it reason the statement being given to it? So it was tested under 3 benchmark, and Gemini Ultra performed better in 2 of it. We have the mathematical text too. Then we have in generating code. That is, you want to generate code, Python code generation, and the likes. To what extent does these generative AI models perform? So Gemini perform much more better than GPT-4. So when it comes to images now, some benchmarks were also used. So, and it was compared with GPT. So in generating images, as I mentioned, Gemini not only works with text now, it's working with images. In generating images, in all the benchmark tested with, Gemini perform better. And also in generating videos and audios, Gemini perform better on the 2 benchmarks it was used for the process. So showing that Gemini Ultra performs better than even the recent release of I mean, the recent release of OpenAI, which is GPT-4. Gemini, one thing with Gemini is the built-in features of feedback, and it has three options there. You mark good responses, you could mark back responses, then you could report legal issues. Maybe what is released has some legal undertone that needs to be checked, probably in terms of the piracy and the like. You could click that, and that gets as feedback to the generative AI model, the Gemini generative AI model, and they work on it. So when the good response is being marked, that becomes something that comes as a response to probably similar queries or similar prompts being given to Gemini. And when any response is marked back bad, it reduces in releasing such responses to similar prompts when such similar prompt is being released. So Gemini also try to come in terms of piracy to solve piracy efforts, which has been a major issue with many of these generative AI. Out of piracy, where did they get the text, the document? It's not just been gotten somewhere without proper acknowledgement of the source. So Gemini, when a length of probably a web page is being used and the code is at length, it always cites that page a little. And sometimes it will put a small image like a thumbnails that could be clicked, and that will lead to the URL, the uniform resource location of where that particular data was copied. So also, if it's an email, the link to that particular source is being put there just so as to show that this is where this length, especially when it's a lengthy, maybe pirated work, it shows that. Just trying to see, can the issue of piracy be solved in generative AI? Gemini has two major technology behind its use. That is the Lambda and the Transformer. The Lambda is majorly an architecture that is trained to read many words, sentence, and the likes. So it pay attention to how the words can be predicted. So it's more on a dialogue application. That is dialogue sentences, dialogue database being trained with the model. Then we have the transformer, which is majorly for language understanding, making use of self-attention mechanism, checking each words, how do the words relate to the sentence, what is the link between them, how do they relate, and the like. So the positioning of each word determines what the response will be. So these two major technology serve as the major things when it comes to Gemini, and this is the architecture of the Gemini model, usually for the Pro version, which is majorly at now and in use, showing the various fine-tuning, the models being used, how the data set is being done, how the sampling, the evaluation, the execution, the filtering, the cost clustering, and the ranking of the various models. So as I mentioned earlier, your Gemini makes use of text. You see that a representing text. You see the audio, the sound. You see the one representing the images, and the last one representing the video. So you can take in that and give that out. Majorly the GPT 3.5, this majorly with text, just displaying text. It can generate videos, it can generate images, it can generate audios. But with Gemini, that can be done. So majorly in computer science, yeah, the the programming language in focus is C sharp. So now look at, can Gemini, because the talk is really on the shortcoming and the challenges of using Gemini to generate programming code. So can Gemini be used with C Sharp? So it could be used. One thing of note is that it could be embedded with Studio, Visual Studio. And if you want to embed it with Visual Studio, one of the steps you have to take is that you have to first of all install your Visual Studio Code. Then you go to the extension link there in your Visual Studio Code and you search for Gemini Code Generator. When Gemini Code Generator is searched for, then it will be installed. So when it's installed, a Gemini token will be requested for. That will be generated, the Gemini API token. Then the token will be copied and saved into the Gemini token inside the Visual Studio Code. Then after that, one press enter, then that is done. So to now generate the code itself, you will now have to go to your Visual Studio Code. After going to your Visual Studio Code, you just type whatever code you want to generate. Maybe let me say print numbers, odd numbers between 1 to 100. 1 to 100. That is, you want the C sharp code that you do that. You allow that. You press Control Shift P. It will bring out the various options. Just click generate code using API, using Gemini API. So it will generate the C sharp code. To generate the C sharp code, then you can run it and you get the answer. So the Gemini can be incorporated with the Visual Studio Code to generate code. One thing we must know is that there are elements of good programming, and I'm stating some here. One of the elements of good programming exercise is the use of the right integrated development environment, right IDE. For you to say a software is okay, a program is okay, there must be proper documentation too. Talk of flowcharts, talk of pseudocode, talk of the algorithm, writing out the specification of the problem being given. Then another thing is the computer resource management. That is, how are you looking into the resource available? We're talking of the hardware available. Can the hardware has the capacity to process this information? How do you write program to be able to manage the computer resource environment? So it's not just about I write code, it's working. Are you putting in place things that could properly manage the computer resource available? Then the choice of variable names and function names too. That is important for easy debugging, for meaningful programs. You make right choice of names. Then also the use of comment for effective debugging. That is the comment you are to use. So if you are writing it yourself, there are comments you put as you write the programs so that when there are errors, you could easily trace, okay, this is where it is. Even other programmers can come in and trace. Then we have the language specification, the right combination of characters, the right syntax. We talk of semantics. So it's not just the program working, is it giving the right output you want? Imagine writing a program to add two numbers together and you have to add 2 plus 2. When you run the program, you put it 2 plus 2 and it's giving you 5. You wonder, oh, yes, the program is running, but it's not correct. It's not giving the intended result or output. So it's not just running a program and it's running. Is it giving the intended output. Then another thing with good programming is the use of updated library. Are you using the recent library in that programming language? Very important. So the choice of that structures too is important. The sort of algorithm, what algorithm are you using? Then the understanding of the tasks to be done. They understand it as the testing of the code, making the program user friendly. It's not just writing program. Is it user friendly? When the user interacts with the end product, do they enjoy working with the program? So those are part of the things in writing programming programs. Then the modularity, when there are large programs, are you able to break it into sub programs, into unit program for easy testing, for unit testing? So also portability. You think of, oh, I'm writing this program, okay, how does it work well in Windows environment, in Mac environment? How does it work well? Oh, when it comes to Android, when it comes to iOS and the like. So portability is also another factor being looked into when programmers write code, and also building an efficient object code, which is as much as possible brief and not too long. So programming is not just about writing code that is functional. Your code must be clear, organized, efficient, scalable, while keeping in mind quality and security too. So there are some shortcomings when it comes to using Google Gemini in programming, which I'm going to list and later show some snapshots of some issues and errors that sometimes occur when using Google Gemini in programming. Number one is in code execution. Really, you can't execute code directly on Gemini. When you just generate the code, you can't run it from there. So you still have to copy, maybe take it to the IDE you are going to use and the like. So it doesn't provide an IDE for running code. For example, the Python code, you can run it directly from there. So also Google Gemini does not provide graphical user interface or packaging a management environment like libraries. Libraries, you can't directly install libraries on Gemini. You have to still bring them probably back to your Anaconda and the likes, where you have to install your libraries and still use. So you can't really rely on it as an ID. That is number two. Number three also is that of data integrity issues. Sometimes Gemini or the code generated might not put into reconsideration the kind of data you are going to deal with, the program we work with. So it just generates a code thinking or making assumption on probably the on what it was playing with. Maybe what it was playing with, they majorly use CSV file. And you are not using CSV file, you are planning to use JSON file. So when the code is generated and you use it, you just, yes, it seems to be working. But when you now start using it, you see it's bringing up errors because of the kind of data input and output restrictions with it. Another thing, number four, is security concerns. You can't expect to generate a code from Gemini, which is on a public space on, okay, for example, how to authenticate users with password. You can't expect such code to be secure. There will really be weakness because it's in the public space. So, but when programmers themselves sit down, they'll be able to put in some things that will put in the necessary security. So programs generated from Google Gemini, we have a lot of security concerns. If programmers now begin to depend solely, absolutely, 100% on this generative AI for generating code, then there will be a lot of security loopholes in softwares that will be developed, in programs that will be giving out the end product. We have a lot of loopholes as regards security. Another thing is there won't be creativity and optimization. The most programs being generated are not optimized for better performance. So when Gemini, Google Gemini, or any of these generative AI is being relied upon fully, and there will be creativity, there will be optimization. Another thing is Google Gemini might not understand the context on which you want to really work. Imagine, for example, you want to code to sort a list of numbers. Google Gemini might want to use another method when perhaps you can use a better method depending on the context of the algorithm you are working with at the present. So there's a limited understanding of context when it comes to using Google Gemini, a generative AI model in generating coding solutions. Then there's also difficulties with complex logic because at times it might not be easy processing some of the algorithm, and what will now be generated will not be able to capture the entirety of the algorithm being used during the program, because probably the programmers have written an algorithm and said this is the algorithm I want to use, and now generate a program, just generate a web program from Google Gemini. It might not agree with the algorithm that's already been developed. Another issue, number 8, is that sometimes there could be debugging difficulties or testing framework. You have a complex program, a whole lot of programs. To now debug becomes difficult because the programmer didn't really understand probably the process, the procedure the generative AI model uses. Sometimes it could even combine different procedures from different sources and just combine it together. And sometimes there are logical errors. I'm going to show some snapshots of that. There could be logical errors that eventually, when you try troubleshooting those errors on Stack Overflow, you keep doing that for hours. The time you could even use in solving or trying to resolve troubleshoot that error, the programmer would have written a good, correct program that will work effectively to solve that particular problem. And also, there's limited cloud integration. There are also potential for biases and error prone because it will be biased on the information accessible to the Gemini program. If probably people believe, oh, this is the way to calculate this, generally, maybe that is what people believe. But probably in research, you have discovered that will not be the right formula for it. This will be the right formula. And yet it's not yet in the data that Gemini was trained with, or some of these generative AI are trained with. When you now write a program to do that, it will still work with the common popular belief from the data it was trained with. And that will bring a lot of bias and a lot of error. And if the programmer didn't even check through enough, we just think that is the right, and that could cause a lot of havoc. Another thing is this generative AI models doesn't really give proper documentation that would be of usefulness to the users that eventually want to use it. Then there is inconsistent code style, the indentation, the naming conventions, because it's just bringing different. It's like wanting to have a human being, the hand of A, the leg of B, and you are just bringing everything together just to form a whole. At the end of the day, it could be confusing and visually confusing. So these are some the shortcomings that could be in Google Gemini. So these are samples of, I just try to generate some from some Python code from Google Gemini, try running it on my Anaconda and the likes, and see the error it was generating. You will see in the left side of the code, it was saying no numeric data to plot. You see that the data issue, I mentioned that input and output restrictions. The data it was thinking about was different from what the work really planned using. So we say the second only subject has no attribute is digit. The generated code was given an attribute, whereas the data itself does not have such attribute to attend to it. Is also another sample, another error that was from another program. This is just to calculate the characters and the word length in a particular file, and this was name string IO is not defined. Because of the data it was trained on, this this particular variable was used in that program. He just incorporated it into the program, and whereas it's not part of what was defined and what was welded. So Errors like this happen. Look at the next one. Dict object has no attribute JSON. The data to use was JSON, whereas the dictionary does not have that. So we have another one, the first one now, because the format of file, reading file, was different from what it was expecting. It was working with the old library. So this first one now was bringing error. So the code looks correct. When you look at it, it might look correct, but the library has been updated, so it couldn't work with that. Look at the one by the right hand, you see, it's for talking of failing data. That means the program was not looking at the resources available, the computer resources available. But if it's the programmer that have written the code, it would have looked into it and know the computer resources and be able to work towards that. So these are some other errors we see using Google AI, Google Gemini to generate codes. So in summary, you see, Google Gemini in generating codes sometimes could be syntactically correct. Sometimes it might look correct, but it might not produce syntactically correct or semantically meaningful code. And I mean syntactic, I mean in terms of the syntax sometimes might have error. Sometimes it might even run. At the end of the day, is when the user starts using it, they now see it generating different errors. So, and also Google Gemini may not be able to effectively test or debug code that it generates because it doesn't run it. If it's that, probably it runs it before releasing the code. Probably that might have made it maybe rerun it several times to make sure it's giving correct. So it doesn't have an ID to do that. So sometimes what it gives might not be correct. Also, Google Gemini may not be familiar with all the latest libraries and frameworks that might be of good use for programmers. You have a new library that really like the programmer could use. Google Gemini is not using it, has been trained before now, beforehand. So it only works with the libraries it was trained with. So that will now give a problem in trying to use new library on framework for projects. And also Google Gemini may not understand the nuances of complex programming tasks and so may not be able to give deep understanding of programming tools that are needed for solving projects. So these are my sources. Thank you very much. Your questions, suggestions are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adegbite, for your presentation. It's very interesting. If there's anybody that has any questions, please, you're welcome to raise your hand. If you don't want to speak, you can also put your questions in the chat box. I have to say that with all the AI Wayfinder seminars, there is a theme that pops up for me, and that is that you mentioned programming is not just writing code, and that um, that idea that you do need expertise, even if you are going to use AI to assist you. So, I do have a question and related to that. Um, would something like Gemini then be a good starting place for a novice programmer when they want to create something? Or would it very particularly not be a good place for them to start?
Should I answer the question on
Oh,
one or
yes.
okay?
Yes, please.
Well, Google Gemini, how it's not advisable a programmer start with generative AI because that might not make the programmer understand some nitty gritty. Not even only Google Gemini, any of these generative AI models. You need to first of all understand some of the syntax, the semantics of these programming languages. So even if there will be the incorporation of some of these generative AI models to be used and the likes, It will just be used to assist in some things and look at some things, but not as a foundational thing. So it will be good a programmer learn some nitty-gritty of the programming languages to use using probably normal textbooks and the likes, other documents, not generative AI model. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jan, you have a question?
Hi, morning, doctors. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I didn't know about Gemini and how it can work with Visual Studio Code. I use Visual Studio Code extensively. I don't use Gemini. I use, let's say, ChatGPT or Bing to generate code for me. And when I run into issues, well, I run into the same issues that the code is not elegant and it's scripted for another, and I have to adjust it. But in those uh, large language models, I'm able to do, when I have an error, I'm able to give it that specific error, and then it will attempt to fix it for me. Can Gemini also do it, or can you just give it instructions and there's no interface for specific error handling? I think that's what I want to ask. Thank you.
Okay, for now, Google Gemini is not having an interface for resolving such. For now, it's not having an interface. And I think I also want to add this. Chat GPT is for you to use it, you have to pay. There's a cost for the API. But presently, Google Gemini API is still free for use to generate the token is still free. I think they said it will be free till next month. So it's still free. So for error, whatever, probably Google Copilot and the likes do that. But presently, there is none as far as I know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ruan, you have a question?
Good morning, colleagues. So I have a slightly different experience because I use Gemini, daily, multiple times a day, and it integrates with my, Visual Studio Code. And I had huge success with it, and I've created a few very complex projects with it as well. So I've used Gemini to create unit tests for my programs. I've done performance optimizations with it. I also use it for formatting and linting. So that is things that programmers such as myself use quite often. But I mean, there's always going to be challenges if you ask a large language model for in a generic way, give me code for this or give me code for that, then you are going to get, I won't say random output, but you're going to get inconsistent output. So the way I have mitigated that is to be very consistent in the prompt engineering aspect. So if you ask it for code, I'll rather say, listen, use Python's coding standards to create code that does A, B, and C, and then your output is more consistent. So I think a lot of these challenges people have with Gemini can, in some degree, be mitigated with, more complex prompt engineering. So that's just the one take that I just want to add to that is I think prompt engineering makes a big difference. And then in terms of what you said, that maybe it's not a great place for a beginner to start with. I do agree with that because I understand how unit tests work and performance and, like you say, algorithms and things like that. So I can immediately see when the output is good or bad, and whether it's useful or not, or if it misunderstands my logic. So what I would recommend is when you have junior staff members that's maybe not good with programming yet, to use something like Gemini and say, I would like to do this, but please explain to me why, or give me a line by line explanation of why you wrote this code. So I would advise against just blindly using the output and running your program, but I ask it, break this down line by line, and then it does teach me. So we don't know everything. Programming is a very complex science. So then you can use Gemini as a coach to kind of steer you in the correct direction. So my debugging and the time I take to figure out issues has decreased quite a lot, because you can use Gemini just like you would have gone onto Stack Overflow or websites that explains errors to you, just by asking it, please be critical of my code, what do you think? And I think prompt engineering there also plays an important role. So yeah, I hope those comments make sense as well.
Yes, thank you for that comment. They are wonderful comments. You are right. Prompt engineering is one major thing when it comes to that. So, and asking the program to give a step-by-step explanation will go a long way for beginners. That is good. Thank you for that comment. I really appreciate.
Yes, thank you. That is also something that we see throughout the seminar series, is the use of AI in teaching, and uh, the prompt engineering that really needs to add to the output that you want. Are there any other questions or comments? I did see some people typing, but I don't see any specific questions. Just while we wait, maybe for any last comments with regards to the specific shortcomings that you listed. Do you know of any future developments planned for Google Gemini that might address those?
Presently, I don't know. Presently, I don't know because they are working on the ultra version, which seems to be to likely be much more better than the pro version. So I can't specifically say, except probably while in use, we see that being addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Sorry,
yes,
Cornell, can I just jump in there? So
absolutely.
so there's two things that I know specifically about. So the one is Google has a program called Duet AI. So that is where they ask programmers, and I'm also part of this, to give critical feedback when you do get output from Gemini. So then what happens is, as you use it, your programmers is giving Google direct feedback, and they can go through your comments and see where they get it wrong. So I think but they don't do that for all of the developers. It's just your developers that knows the products well, and in such a way they use reinforcement learning to improve on their algorithms. So I do think there's improvements, but it's also just gradual. As more and more people use it, they get more and more feedback. But they have this Duet AI for developers.
Oh, thank you very much. I will definitely add that to the resources when we link up the videos.
Thank you for that information. Really appreciate it.
Okay, so this is a really interesting conversation, and sharing how we use these different tools, I think, really helps our community to develop as well. Thank you again, Dr. Adegbite. We really appreciate your time and your knowledge, sharing it with us. And I hope we will soon have more conversations on this platform and other platforms to talk about that. So thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you at the next AI Wayfinder Seminar Series.